Okay, welcome everyone to the next podcast. Don't know why I say that every time, to be honest, but there we go. Um, we're cordially with Wayne again, Wayne Hylla, who we had a couple of
Hello.
months ago, I guess, when we was talking about what's we talking about? Oh yeah, human
Human
factors.
factors.
That went down really well, actually.
Yeah.
That's one of the most listened to podcasts. So yeah,
Oh,
done
good.
well. I think everyone was just looking at your position in the hotel. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm a lot more comfortable this time.
Yeah.
I'm not propped up at a weird angle against a low ceiling.
Yeah, you have to forgive my shininess. It's the lighting in this hotel, so it's me that looks a bit funny this time.
You can just see just how good looking I am in this one.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. We'll get just add
That's
in
what my
another
mum
two
says anyway.
subscribers. Yeah.
I know, right? Yeah.
Oh dear. Right, cool. Yeah, so this time we're going to be talking about KPIs. We only thought of this one last night on a whim, or day before, I think.
Yeah.
Which is a
Yeah.
good subject. It impacts the aerospace standards considerably. It's a big
Mhm.
part of it, but it also does impact 9001
Yeah.
standards, which most people miss, don't they?
Yeah, because it's not actually specifically an aerospace requirement, is it? It
No.
is in the 9001 text. Um, yeah, it's in there. So.
Yeah, but most people
Yeah.
don't do it right, do they? Let's be fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a conversation I've had with a lot of clients, not just 9001, but also aerospace. Still trying to get it right, find appropriate measures that work well, and that are worth measuring as well.
Yeah. Clause 441 is
Yeah,
441, isn't it? Yep.
it is. Yeah.
Within ISO 9001. That's testing me then.
Mhm.
It's
There you
been a
go.
long
There you
it's
go.
been a long day. Um
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's 441C, isn't it? If I'm going to get really nerdy.
Yeah, if you get really nerdy. Yeah. Do you know the
Yeah,
exact text?
it's in brackets. I know that bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so basically the standard refers to measuring your processes and it does mention key performance. I don't think does it mean key performance indicators or
It
is it
doesn't
just say
say key
performance?
performance,
I
it
think it
just
says
says
performance
performance
indicators,
indicators.
doesn't it? Yeah.
It does, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So how do
yeah.
we interpret that in the aerospace standard? Go on.
So the way we look at it in the aerospace standard is we look at what the key processes are, which are kind of divided up. It's the clause 8 processes that are divided up depending on the business into a number of key processes, and then each one of those needs to have KPIs to measure the effectiveness of that process, which ultimately feeds into the mandatory KPIs within the aerospace standard, which is on-time delivery and product quality or service quality.
Which pretty much
Yeah,
every organisation, isn't it, really? Not just
yeah,
aerospace, but everyone's trying to either deliver a product or deliver a service, aren't
yeah. Well, it's how you keep your customers happy, isn't it? If it's on time and the quality's right, then they've got nothing to complain about. So it's like any delivery from Amazon or anybody that you order from. If it's what you've ordered, the quality's there, and it was when you expected it, then everybody's happy.
they?
So yeah. So I think that with that, I think that um, those two things are definitely key to keep in mind when you're looking at performance indicators.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So how does
Yeah.
someone go about it?
Um, yeah. So I guess what generally I'd say the best way to do it is just to start with on-time delivery and product quality, and then just look at what your processes are and how that impacts that. Um, so production or service provision is an obvious one, because if it's not delivered on time, then there's usually something that's caused that backlog. So you could look at adherence to schedules with things like that. But yeah, I'd say break it down, look at each process, whether that's sales, whether that's purchasing, and just look at what elements of those processes impact on time delivery or product quality. It's and trying to not, or definitely not having too much influence from external factors. for sure, which is a bit of a pitfall that I see quite a few companies kind of fall into the trap of external factors, particularly when you look at sales processes and stuff. They kind of look at quote conversions and things like that, which are not necessarily measuring the effectiveness of the process, because that's, you take, for example, COVID. I tend to use that as an example when I'm discussing this. Is you might be doing everything right, your process might be spot on, working like a Swiss watch, but through COVID, nobody was buying anything, so your sales are going to be down, aren't they? On the flip side of that, you could be running like a bag of rusty old nails, but you happen to be the only person that provides what you do, or people just happen to know that you're the quality of what you deliver is great, but your sales is terrible, so they're going to stick with that. Just so. There's too much influence from external factors with that KPI as an example. So trying to look internally on the process, I think, is the first thing to consider. So, yeah.
I suppose we should probably highlight what the processes are, shouldn't we? Which is obviously every company's different. No company's
definitely.
processes are the same. They should focus on key processes, which are really anything that affects product or service. Directly impacts the customer. So I mean, we get some clients that only have one process, don't they? Really, because it's a very straightforward. Order comes in, ship it out. It's very simple.
So an example I've got of that, I've got a client that just that does honing and grinding, and so they don't really buy anything because it's all free issued parts and material. So the process, and there's a small workshop, so it's all handled by the same people. Responsibilities all sit with the same people, so they just have one key process. But then on the other side of things, you can have places where they've got 4 or 5 key processes, depending on who's responsible and what the sort of chain of events are. From the initial inquiry from your customer through to delivery.
So when I'm explaining, I always sort of say, let's break it down really simple. 90% of organisations have got sales, some kind of purchasing, then some kind of doing, and then that's it. So it's kind of 3 generally. I
tend to do the same with that, and kind of I also relate it to the clause 8 sections in the standard, those sort of big sections in there too. But and one thing I do say to people is sales is a bit misleading when you look at the standard, because that kind of clause 8.2 tends to be the sales element, which tends to be more customer communication, identifying what the needs of the customer is and stuff like that, whereas sales can be misunderstood or misinterpreted as going out and winning contracts and the sales side of it. So so I always try and guide people to that. I try and guide people to that part of it as well, is that it's the whole customer facing section of your business. So
okay. So if we've got our 3, let's just go on 3. 3 key processes. We'll keep it simple. Been a long day.
It's Monday. We got.
That's it. Got a full week of this yet. Yeah. So
I know.
Why do we actually need them? Like, I know the standard says we've got to have KPIs in place to measure the effectiveness. Well, why do we actually need it? What's the purpose of it?
So it is. I'd say in its simplest term, it is to make sure that each of those processes, so each of those 3 processes, are doing what they need to do to make sure that you're delivering what you've promised when you've promised. So making sure that there's no delays in anything. So if a contract review comes in, not sitting on it for weeks before giving it to purchasing to buy materials and then onto production, for example, or purchasing, making sure that they're aware of lead times of materials or things like that, so that they can make sure that things are ordered on time, to make sure we get them in time. Because the other thing is we're beholden to our suppliers in some cases, aren't we? So just kind of managing that, and it's just kind of managing the processes in a way that makes sense and is effective as well, because there's no point in measuring something if it's 100% all the time. I think that's, you kind of missing the point of it. You're not really getting anything out of it, So I think it's good to consider what your process is and understand your process.
Yeah, I think some people rush off and they put KPIs in place without fully understanding their process and what the intent is. And then once they sort of get further down the process, or an external auditor comes in, we're like, this doesn't kind of work, does it? Because the KPI needs to measure that process, what that's doing. And I think a lot of people make that mistake.
Yeah, exactly, and I've seen it a lot, even with the way you measure things. So I see it time and time again where people are measuring monthly statistics based on a percentage of percentage based on the orders versus deliveries. And you could have one month you've got 2 orders, the next month you've got 100 orders. Both months you've missed, you're late on one of them, but first month you're on 50% on-time delivery, the next month you're on 99% on-time delivery. So, it's also identifying, what makes sense in how you're going to measure it. Because that sort of thing, you probably want to look at maybe a rolling target or a rolling average, or, extending that measurement to 6 months, or however you want to do it, or PPM, or another way of doing it. So so definitely understanding what the reason for your measuring and how you're measuring it is definitely key.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people, it's a bit of a contentious issue, this, but I know a lot of people will just put on-time delivery on each of their processes exactly the same, because the eventual goal is on-time delivery. And it's the wrong way of doing it, because on-time delivery doesn't measure an individual process, it measures all the processes together. And
exactly,
I think that's a bit of a head scratcher for some people.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I try and get people to understand that that's the end goal, and that is a measurable process. The same with product quality, because you might have the production have made this fantastic thing. It's all shiny and sparkly and everything's great, but sales have given them the wrong revision drawing because they didn't make sure they got the right drawing, So the quality's it's not there, but it's not production's fault. It's sales are responsible for that kind of thing. Those are the sort of things to be aware of. But I do think maybe controversially on that is using those, on-time delivery, yes, but if you can identify which processes have created any delivery delays, if you've got a 98% on-time delivery, what processes have caused that 2%, and can you demonstrate, 0.5% was sales, 5% was purchasing, 1% was production, for example, and I think it's a great start. And I think it's a great start as well, because you can look at trends and stuff as well, can't you? You can look at why things are late. If you're starting to see things that are creating this consistent late issues, then you can put KPIs to drill down on those. Then, can't you? You can be a bit more specific on your KPIs.
So if we've got sales, purchasing, production, stroke service delivery, what can we do then? Have you got some ideas on what ones do work that measure those processes, or how would an organisation go about it?
So other than, like I said, the on-time delivery and product or service quality, where those processes are involved, other than that, I'd look at things like accuracy of contract review, maybe for the sales process. Have things been appropriately reviewed? Have you got all the documents? If a customer says it's got to be done in accordance with this, have we got that? Have we reviewed that? Can we do that? Can we actually achieve the tolerances that are expected, for example? Have we got the terms and conditions? Have we read the fine print? Because I've seen the terms and conditions, I've seen customers put in the requirement for first article inspection reports, for example, in the terms and conditions, but it's not been picked up because some other customers might put that in as a line item on their purchase order. So, those sorts of things. So maybe think something like that would be something worth looking at, or things like how long are you sitting on contract reviews? Is that something that can be measured? You can look at schedule adherence. If you know that something takes a certain amount of time, is that programmed? Have you got a Gantt chart, if you've got a program in place for any projects that you're doing, are you meeting these gates? Are you meeting in full? Are you achieving all the tasks that were set at the last gate? Have you met all of those? Have you caught up with any actions? That sort of thing. So, yeah.
I think a good one in the sales depends on the business and how they're structured, but sometimes they determine the lead time and the capacity planning. And I think that's could be a good one, because they'll say, you'll get it in 2 weeks, and then production get it. You're like, what? There's like 3 weeks worth of machining on this. I've got to go and get it heat treated or something like that. And it's like, no chance. But sales teams sometimes promise the earth. So I think that could be a good measure sometimes.
Yeah, and they don't consider the fact that it's a 5-week lead time for the materials even, and things like that. So I think that is a great one. I think capacity planning is definitely a good KPI to look at. Yeah, and I think again it's having a look at your overall KPI results. I'd also say to focus on what needs to focus. If you're delivering 99.9% product quality and everybody's happy with the quality that you're delivering, but your delivery performance in terms of on-time delivery is at 70%, you probably want to put your KPI focus on the on-time delivery and what the chokeholds are, what your bottlenecks are. And even consider things like fault codes or cause codes and things like that. So you can bring in other reviews of kind of trends and stuff like that. Pareto diagrams are quite useful for that kind of thing as well. So
I was going through that today with a client, funny enough, looking at Paretos on the failures, things like that. I think people sometimes get sucked into reporting the good stuff. Like you say, the quality, great, but actually we're terrible at delivery. Well, as a management team, you want to know what you're bad at.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
where your action should be. Like, our on-time delivery is not great. Let's focus on that. Not so much the quality. Quality's good. So
and I think it's like anything you do. If you want to improve, there's no point in keep doing the same thing you're doing well and keep training that. You need to train the things that you're not good at and improve those. That's the only way we can improve, not just as a business, but as human beings as well, right? So
definitely.
Yeah, so I think adjusting focus and stuff like that, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about making sure that these indicators are appropriate to what you want to achieve and where your business sits and what it's doing at the moment. And also, you don't have to stick with them. Once you set KPIs, you don't have to. That's not it set in stone. That's not. It's not the be all and end all. If you set one and you think, right, for 6 months we've had 0 complaints. Okay, well, so we can measure something else, and you can change that, and there's nothing to stop you doing that. And I think it actually shows a maturity in the business to actually be a bit dynamic with things and really focus on what you need to.
Yeah, some people don't change them, do they? They just leave them the same for 3 years, and like you say, hitting 100%. What are we doing now? Well, can't change them. That's where they are. No, change them. Change them as the business changes.
And not just the actual KPI, but the target as well. Like I've been into places where, you've got a target of 90%, and you have done for the last 3 years, but you're achieving 99%. So why is your target 90%? You need to bring that up. So drive some improvement. Drive some. It might be small, finite improvement, but that's kind of what we're going for. And particularly with the aerospace industry, we're trying to, a lot of the tier 1 guys are pushing for the 0 defects and all that sort of thing. So, we need to push that into our KPIs and the performance of our suppliers and what we're doing. So
one of the things I say when getting a new client, it can be quite hard to get their target. So what I tend to say to them is, look, get 6 months worth of data, average it out, then make a little improvement on that. That should be your target. Some people just either shoot for the stars straight away. You're like, what are you doing? It's miles away. You're never going to hit it. Or they just they think, we're not very good. Let's lowball it. We'll put it below where we are. And I think they're missing the point that it's about continual improvement, trying to get somewhere. So I think to get your first baseline, get about 6 months worth of data. Let's just say it's 80% on-time delivery, and then look for an improvement on that 80%. So years ago, there was an unwritten rule that you should do 20% improvement year on year. It's an unwritten rule,
right? Okay,
but it's one I quite like going to, so it can work quite well.
Yeah.
We use it internally, type thing, so that could be
good. Yeah, and I think that's also like setting a target that's almost unreachable. Then it can look bad or be disheartening if you set it at 90% and actually you're only achieving 70. You probably should have set it at 72%. Or something to
75
to kind
or
of
something a bit well.
Yeah. Just chip away at it and chip away at the improvements and start to understand how to improve it, rather than thinking, right, well, we need to step back now and drop our targets back. It doesn't always look good,
I know
it's
it
might make sense to you.
I know we kind of look at it that way in the UK, but I know in America they're like, no, 100%. Otherwise, you're admitting to some of your customers that you're not going to deliver on time or something. But I think in the UK, we're a bit more, well, no, you've got to be a little bit realistic. Where our capabilities are, we can't hit 100. We're at 80.
Yeah.
We've got to make some improvements to get there. So, give us a few years type thing.
And I often say that to people. I say, don't necessarily think of it as a target, but think of it as a trigger point. If depending on where you are in your performance, in terms of if you drop below that trigger point, you then take a step back and look at your system and how you're going to improve the whole system. For example, if you set a quality target at 99%, the 1% you'll action each one individually, but if you drop down to 98%, then you need to look at your system. And because the example I generally give is if you make 1 million widgets in a year and you don't deliver one of them correctly, that's not 100%. But if you've delivered 1 million, you're not going to lose sleep. You're not going to necessarily change everything in your system and your process and all that sort of thing for 1 out of 1 million. Of course, you're going to address that 1. You're going to fix that 1 because you don't want to have one. But it's not likely going to start a whole tear up the playbook and start again.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, that's the client I'm at today, or this week, I should say. Last year, they were just every month they were looking at their KPIs. It'd be red, green, and they were kind of just kept taking little actions. They weren't seeing the whole trend over the year.
Yeah.
You're kind of losing focus and you're getting a little bit too in the weeds, I think. So this year, they've actually plotted it over 12 months. Like I say, they had the odd blip. But generally, you can see their performance and they've charted it and it's going up. And I said that you don't worry about the little blip here and there. Yet, like you say, you've taken action to fix whatever little gripe that was. But overall, your improvement is going up. That's the big stuff we're looking at. It's what these projects that are going to take from 80 to 85. What are you going to change to get you there? That's the big focus on.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say to my clients, nobody's perfect. I get bits wrong in my report. I make spelling errors. I do things. I make mistakes as well. I'm not 100% perfect, so I can't expect other people to be 100%. Nobody is. Nobody's perfect every time, all day, every day. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody. I don't care who you are. Everybody has a bad. I mean, you were saying yourself, you weren't too well this week, and of course that's a perfect opportunity for something to go slightly wrong. But that's the blip that we're talking about, isn't it? That's not going to change everything that you do. You know what the problem is. You fix what the problem is, and then just have a bit more chicken soup or whatever, and then then you're back on.
Mine's retire, and I haven't got enough money yet. That's the only way I'm going to fix me.
You're not old enough yet, are you?
I feel it.
Do you? You still look young. You still look young.
It's all this facelifts I have, and
is that what it is?
Yeah,
that's why I grow the beard to hide the age. Yeah. Saying that, I'm 40 this week on Wednesday. Yeah.
Catching me up.
That's it. I'll always be catching you up.
That's it.
Yeah.
Cool. But, so what I say to people on those targets, actually, when you saying about moving them, I kind of expect people at least every 3 years if I like to see people improve it every year, but if they haven't changed it when I come round for the recertification, I then start asking a bit deeper questions. It's been at 80 for 3 years. Where have you gone over that 3-year cycle? Are you up, you're down? Your target should be pushing you. Because it is about continual improvement, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And this is where finding those trends and looking at your data as a whole data set is beneficial, because you can find these trends, so you can put actions in to stop these trends and generally improve. And like I go back to the Pareto diagram or model, the 80. And I had it recently with a client that I do some consulting with, and that you do actually audit. Their on-time delivery performance was pretty. Yeah, their on-time delivery performance isn't where they wanted it to be, and all they kept saying was it's a new project. It's the customer's design. It's a new design. They're trying to work with us. It's causing a lot of delays. But then when you actually look at the raw data, that was probably only about 2% of the delays.
Oh, interesting.
The rest were because you can often focus on things that give you the most frustration, and then you lose the focus on what's really going on, which is what the Pareto theory diagram is good at. It's raw data. It tells you, if you've got cause codes on things, it tells you exactly what you're doing. It tells you exactly what's going on and what the big players are in why you're missing your targets, or how you can improve your targets.
Yeah. So I think some people get scared of getting in trouble for missing a target. I'd always say to it, it's not about missing the target. It's about what you're doing to resolve it. You're fine to miss things, like you say. We're all human. Things go wrong. It's being aware of the numbers, being aware of the data, where you are, and what you're doing to try and improve it and get back to where you should be.
Exactly.
You won't get penalised for failing. Yeah.
No, I'd much rather see a client that's missed a target and actually doing something to really get it right. I'd much rather see that than somebody who's measuring something that's 100% every time, all the time, and not changing it, not looking at what other things can we look at. There's the odd moment, but
do you test the data? So I often have that when people keep presenting it, and I'll always pick one or two of the KPIs and say, "Show me the data." So I can test it. Is that actual figure you're reporting true, or are you just trying to feed me something or kid yourselves?
Yeah. And it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody hiding that data. And I do look at the data. I look at generally look at like the last 12 months, or at least since the last audit, and see what the trends are and stuff like that. And generally you see, there's always a month or two that's below target. Even if you're achieving your target across the year, there's always a month or two below target.
Holiday season, Christmas. End of
and so and I actually had a client recently that interestingly enough noticed a year-on-year trend over 5 years, and you put all the data next to each other and they looked exactly the same, and it turned out that they just had this kind of cyclical performance thing with customer orders and holiday periods and stuff like that, so they could actually look at it in an even bigger picture, not just from the year, but looking at the sort of long-term performance and trends and stuff, where they could then manage that a bit better. And you can see that the year that since then that they'd looked at that, it's shown a lot of improvement. So
better prepared for stock. There's a lot of things you can do.
Exactly. Exactly. And that. Go on.
No, I was going to say I had a metal stockist.
Oh yeah.
And all their material through the winter took so long because of the roads being closed, like international transport. And all they'd done is they said, well, we're just going to give ourselves an extra month, so we order 1 month earlier, and then everything was getting there on time. Yeah, because it was just so hard for them to counteract all the weather that they just planned in a little bit more time, and it all worked out for them.
And that's a great example of these fixes not needing to be rocket science. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to sit there with all this data and scratching your head all the time. Sometimes it's the simplest things. And I think the other thing to consider is talking to everybody on the shop floor, people that are actually dealing with what you're measuring. What are they seeing? Because you'll get great feedback. And I keep going back to this, is that understanding, that sort of ground up, that bottom feeding of information, because you generally get good feedback from your guys and girls and etc. on the shop floor, because they see it. Especially as a manager in management, you kind of overseeing the sort of big picture. And it's not always the big picture that's showing you the problems. Sometimes it's the small picture that the more focused groups of your business are working with. So, yeah.
Okay. So what about purchasing then? That's another key one.
Yeah.
What can people measure there? Okay. Are there two obvious ones, or?
I think the purchasing ones that I keep seeing people measure is supplier on-time delivery and supplier quality, which is great, because you should really be measuring that, but that's a different part of the standard. That's 8.4. Yeah. When we're talking about 4.1, you need to measure the process. So, are you raising purchase orders on time? Are they full and accurate? Are you flowing down the information correctly? If you've got, say, a material supplier like you were talking about, are they flowing down particular standards? Like if there's with what we do with the aerospace stuff, are there ASTM standards that need to be flowed down to your supplier? Things like, especially with some of these restrictions on countries of origin and stuff like that we've got going in the world at the moment. Are we considering that? Are we checking that? You can look at that, but also depending on where your goods in process sits, is goods in is that efficient? Are you booking things in properly? Is it stocked properly? Is it on time? Other guys getting a whole bag of bolts and wondering what the hell it is because it's not been labelled properly, or they've miscounting things and they're having to keep going back to stock to get more bits, and looking at these kind of things that you might fall short on as well. So there's again, it's going back to what in purchasing impacts the quality and delivery of what you do. That's kind of where I'd stay at. Are you on top of lead times? You're particularly, when the conflict in Ukraine first started, and we were having a massive problem with material supply, and lead times were all over the place and prices were all over the place. Was your purchasing team on top of that? Was that managed effectively? And what KPIs could you put in place to make sure that is managed effectively? Yeah,
I think everyone jumps on the on-time delivery and quality for suppliers, which is okay.
Yeah,
Sometimes I accept it, but it doesn't really measure that purchasing process, does it, as a whole?
No.
Stock shortages.
You could argue that it's You could argue that it measures your supplier approval process, maybe, but I think that's a bit woolly, isn't it? Being a bit woolly and you're not getting anything out of it either. If you're not getting anything out of that, like you say, finding the sticking points in your business, you can only look internally, because purchasing should be on top of that. If you've got lead time issues, if you've got suppliers that are constantly delivering late, are they late because you've given them
the wrong amount of lead time, information?
Yeah. They've told you that it's 3 weeks lead time, and you've ordered it for the next day.
That's it. You immediately go and blame the supplier, don't you? But you kind of got to look at yourself first sometimes.
Yeah. And it's funny because the clients, some of the clients I audit, they talk about our customers. They raise the purchase order and it's got today's date on the delivery. And and if you're doing the same to your suppliers, the frustration's there as well, isn't it? So so it's managing that process and taking a step back and looking at what is that process does.
Practice what you preach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We all try. Do as I say, not as I do. That's the usual thing, right? Yeah, but we're trying not to do
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what about sort of production? Maybe we could do a service as well. Just because it's not all machine shops, is it? That have to have KPIs. So what's some good things around there?
Yeah, so I think you could look at what your deliverables are. Are they delivered in full on time to schedule? Like I
Paperwork,
sort of said, yeah, like I said
good
if
paperwork
earlier,
there.
if you've got a customer that says, right, we've got this project. I had an audit a couple of weeks ago actually, and their design department worked within their customer's design department, and the customer's giving them a Gantt chart, and their internal Gantt chart was actually a bit tighter than the customer's one. They kind of made sure they're on top of it, which was good. But I've also seen it the other way around, where your customers say we want this, and then you've planned it late already. It's already in the plan as late. So that's kind of maybe something else you could look at. And so adherence to schedule. Maybe if it's kind of like more of a Word document or PDF or something that's a deliverable, the accuracy of that, does it get rejected by the customer for spelling mistakes and stuff like that?
It's kind of right first time, isn't it, at the customer?
Exactly, yeah. So, but again, being careful not to blame all right first time on production, because if something's been missed earlier down the line, then production would be kind of blindly going into it without realizing what's going on.
Yeah.
So
I've had that before where they failed production
yeah,
because things were going out wrong and it was the wrong revision, it was made of the wrong material, things like that. But they kept penalising production. But when you actually looked at it, it's because contract review had given them the wrong information in the first place. They can only make what they're given.
Exactly.
It says use aluminium 6082, so I used it. Well, actually, it should have been 7075.
Exactly. Yeah. So and I think that's the key thing with production, is not blaming production. That's kind of the thing I see more often than not, is blaming production for everything that goes wrong. And I think generally KPIs for production are not too bad. It's just they can be a bit hard on production for that reason, because you are, like going back to the lead time thing, if you're only passing the job to production with 2 weeks left and it's a 4-week long job, then they're already on the back foot. There's no way they're going to catch up on that.
Yeah. I was going through one the couple of months ago, and everything was setup issue. Setup errors. So I was like, let's have a look at this. We started going through it. Okay, setup. Well, that was programmed wrong. That's programmed wrong. That's programmed wrong. It was, setup was wrong because they were given a wrong program. It was, you had the wrong datums, or it kept crashing, something like that. No, they didn't set it up wrong at the production. It was the engineering department that produced the program.
Got the wrong information.
Yeah, exactly. The guys are like, I don't know, I'll just set it up where it says it,
Yeah, and doing exactly what it says on the tin. Exactly. It's not my fault the tin isn't right.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of like KPIs to set for production, I'd say, if you've got that capacity, or is the capacity plan followed? Are you on time with your schedule? Are you working the machines at the right, whatever it might be,
speeds, cycle times,
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole raft of things you can do for production or service provision, and it really depends largely on what it is. There's a client of mine that makes carpets, and the key thing for them would be the loom setup. Is the loom setup accurate? Because that can take them weeks to set up that loom. And then if they start weaving a carpet and there's something out of place, then that's set everything back, because then they've got to unpick a whole line of thread or whatever it might be that's wrong,
A cream carpet with one red thread.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of it.
Or just a white, cream carpet with a white thread down the center or so, So, So again, looking at what the importance of is within the process is definitely a key thing.
So I've got someone who does asbestos surveys.
Okay.
And their deliverable is the report at the end. And their measure is the quality of the report. A big part of it is for asbestos. Is it reported correctly? Is it risk assessed properly? How's it presented? Is it accurate? If they start getting phone calls from the customer that they've sent this report going, well, this wrong building, or the dimensions are wrong, or what's this, doesn't tie up, then obviously, that's a problem that they've got in their reporting process. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also considering the process as well in terms of what you measure with your KPIs. So I've got a similar example where a client I have that does technical publications, but the process they've got catches any errors within that publication. And because it's people typing things up, there's going to be errors. So rather than measure every single thing, doing a non-conformance report for every single thing, they'll have like a log that just kind of logs it. And then if there's anything that comes back from customer, then that becomes a problem. So the back and forth is not necessarily measured to the same degree, but the customer stuff is measured. So it's interesting when you kind of think about the different types of businesses out there and what they deliver and what you can set as KPIs. There's an awful lot that you can kind of go to. Easy ones are like reworks and product quality, and things we think about it tend to be, because we see a lot of machine shops, tend to be that kind of related, but it's not always that easy, I suppose.
Like you said, go to what you're trying to deliver. What's important to the customers, and work your way back. How can we make sure we achieve this? How we should do, and work it back into your system.
Yeah, because your product is your deliverable. You know, like for what we do, our product is the audit report and the certificate. You know, that's so we need to make sure that is delivered correctly. You know,
you'd be amazed how many auditors don't think that way. Through the report rejects, it's like, what is this? It's
But that's what it is. You know, we can be amazing auditors, but if our reports are terrible, it doesn't mean anything. So we need to make sure we deliver our reports effectively, with minimal call-ups at technical review. You know, so it depends on what you're delivering, doesn't it? I try and see things as what is the deliverable, because that's your product. It doesn't matter what it is. Your deliverable is your product.
Yeah, definitely. So good one's design.
Yeah.
A lot of people struggle with design and development. So one of the ones obviously it depends on the organisation and what they're doing. One of the ones that I kind of not suggest that people come up with quite often is, does the design, well, first of all, does it meet the inputs? Obviously, does it achieve what it was supposed to achieve? But was it designed on time? Yeah, because there's usually a product, and I know that can move its goalpost quite often in projects. But another good one is the cost of the product. Yep. So if initially, right, we've got to build this, it's got to be about £5,000. Does your design make that product £5,000 at the end? Yeah. You know, there's that. Some of those things can be quite useful, but it is a tough one. Design can be challenging.
Yeah, I agree. Because again, with design, it's such a huge range of things, even within one company. Like I was with a client in Northern Ireland that they could have a design that was a widget for Jeff down the road, and then you've got things for big aerospace companies, and the design process is going to be hugely different. So trying to come up with effective measures of that is often challenging, for sure. And I do think, like you say, things like, have you achieved what you're supposed to? Have you met the inputs? And going back to like the Gantt charts, have you achieved what you're supposed to for each gate? How many actions have you got left over from what you've been expected to deliver? And that can be difficult, even depending on who's the kind of driver of the design, because quite often with the aerospace clients that we see, the driver of the design is often the customer. So,
and that's where the goalpost can move quite a lot, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and one pitfall I did see quite often is on-time delivery with design, because they've said, well, we're going to do the design, it's going to take 3 weeks, but then it's taken 2.5 weeks for the customer to respond to the first bit. So so how do you manage that? How do you take that into account? And one thing I tend to think about with that one is, what do you manage? So pausing that design process. As your elements of the design process been done within the 2 weeks, even if the date is beyond
cost of design, because you do it by hour, you can track the hours, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Cost of the design can be a factor, but managing it so that you're not doing yourself a disservice because the customer's taking their time to. They're sat on your design for weeks before they say, actually, can you change this?
Yeah.
Because I've seen that so many times. The client I was with, they had a very similar thing. In fact, exactly that thing. It was, well, they've set a 3-week goal, but the customer's been sat on it for 2 weeks. So they're already behind. And then you saw the data, which again was skewed from the 1 month they had 5 products, another month they had 2, another month they had 15. So the data is skewed from that. So, and then it takes 1 or 2 in the low volume months to completely screw up the data, really. So.
Yeah. That's why it's important to understand your data and what you can measure. Don't just rush into it, measure it because you can. It's got to add some benefit to the business.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like it's been, you've gone onto Google and said, what KPIs can I measure? Which is great to give you some ideas, but really you need to understand what you're measuring, what your processes are. And I think a good way to manage that is if you've got process owners, is get them to come up with it. Get them to think about what it is. Give some ownership of the system to the people that are working within the system. And KPIs is no different. KPIs are no different to that. It's especially when you've got targets that don't make sense. Like I remember I had targets that didn't make sense to me in any ways whatsoever because I had no influence on them, but we were being measured on them. And that was what my performance was being measured on. I can't do anything about that. If
it becomes meaningless, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I can't improve or not, and that's what most people want to improve. Most people want to do a good job, and most people want to get it right. So, yeah, I think going back, I think we just talked about this last time as well. Actually, is talking to people. Talking to your workforce and understanding from them as well, what you can do.
Well, you can tell them the overall vision and goal is to get it on time and quality, just for argument's sake. Yeah. What do you do that impacts that, and how can we measure that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's and it can be as easy as that, a conversation as easy as that, But also, it's understanding that what the figures are, what they look like. If you're measuring ppm, if you're measuring percentages, if you're measuring whatever else, I do tend to say to avoid financial targets.
Yes.
If you're going to set a financial target, try and turn that into a percentage or a that kind of value. Mostly because we can't report any financial details.
No, not a measure of quality, is it? Really.
It's not.
That's what they say.
It's not.
Money's not quality. Quality should come first. Say that as you will. But,
exactly.
Yeah. One thing I do when people do put financial sometimes is on the sales element. If they want to, just argument's sake, grow into automotive or grow into aerospace, so they sort of say, right, we want 500,000 or something. I'm like, well, just flip that and put it into a percent. If it's 500,000 and your turnover $1 million, but then you say you want to put 50% into automotive because it's about diversification. It's not the money; it's about diversifying and risk averse and things like that. So you can move it around that way, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can. Yeah, exactly what you said. You can change it into a percentage, change it into something that works for you and that you can report. Because. Yeah, and going back to money doesn't mean quality. You just look at the counterfeit business is worth billions, but it's not quality, is it?
That's true.
So
it's some very wealthy counterfeiters out there.
Yeah, and they're not worried if it's the highest quality or not, are they? So yeah. It's but I think the main thing is to keep in mind your on-time delivery and product or service delivery quality. And really kind of drive that thing.
Excellent. Cool. Right. That probably wraps it up. Is there anything you wanted to add as a last minute thing?
Just the usual stuff. You can find me on LinkedIn, and drop me a message on there, or
I'll put your links in the whatever it is at the bottom. Yeah, the show notes. So
yeah. So if anybody wants to ask me anything, or pick my brains or anything like that, or need any assistance with anything, then just more than happy to help.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for doing this. Been fun again.
Yeah, fun again. Anything for you, you know that.
Anything, especially as a last minute thing.
I know, yeah. I think we did all right considering this was cooked up the other night.
Yeah. Makes it sound like we know what we're doing.
I know. Zero prep time. Just go straight in. I suppose feet first. What's the worst that could happen?
That's it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Mike. Yes. It was good to talk to you.
Yeah. Right. Cheers.